The steady hum of the jet engines wrapped around Jack Miller like a warm embrace, almost mesmerizing. He shifted in his seat, tucking the small blanket snugly around his 8-year-old daughter, Emma. She had drifted off against his arm, her beloved stuffed penguin clutched tightly in her little hands. The sweet scent of strawberry shampoo wafted up from her hair, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Jack experienced a sense of contentment. Seat 12F, right side, window view. He'd picked it purposefully, always thrilled by the opportunity to glimpse the vast sky. This journey was Emma's brainchild, a delightful surprise visit to her grandmother in Virginia. Jack had taken a leave from his job as a high school physics teacher, a rare treat he hadn't indulged in for ages. Life as a single dad was a whirlwind, leaving little time for a breather. Yet despite still carrying the discipline of a soldier in his bones, his heart had softened significantly since he'd left the Air Force. No one on this flight recognized the man he used to be. The nickname Ghost Rider was a relic of his past, buried along with memories of his old squadron, a sealed chapter after the tragic loss of his wife. The flight attendants glided down the aisle, wearing cheerful smiles as they served drinks and snacks. Jack requested black coffee, and as the attendant handed it to him, a striking woman in a navy suit caught his gaze. She sported a silver Air Force pin on her lapel and held his stare just a heartbeat longer than expected before diverting her attention. He quickly dismissed it, just another traveler, perhaps curious about the faint scar above his brow, a story he had long since stopped bothering to explain. As the plane began its descent toward Dulles, Jack felt an unexpected jolt, definitely not turbulence but something sharper. The engines emitted a different whine, and through the window, he spotted a swift shadow darting across the clouds. Another plane? No way. This was different, sleek and fast. Excitement bubbled within him as he pondered what it could be. F-22 Raptors. 2 of them. A buzz of excitement filled the cabin as passengers whispered and lifted their phones to capture the unusual sight outside. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, slightly shaky but full of urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to follow a new flight path due to restricted airspace. Nothing to worry about." Jack's heart raced. F-22s didn't just escort passenger planes without a good reason. His eyes darted back to the woman in the navy suit. Now she was intently focused on him. Her lips were moving, almost as if she was about to speak, but ultimately, she held back. As soon as the plane touched down, everything went into hyperdrive. Before anyone could rise from their seats, 2 Air Force vehicles sped up beside the jet bridge. Uniformed personnel stormed aboard with a precision that added an electric charge to the air. A wave of curiosity rippled through the cabin. "Mr. Jack Miller," one officer called out, scanning the rows with determination. Jack felt a jolt of electricity course through him. Years of training kicked in, instincts flaring awake. He shifted slightly to shield Emma, who was stirring in her sleep. "I'm Jack Miller," he replied, positioning his voice carefully. The lead officer snapped a crisp salute. "Sir, welcome back, Ghost Rider." The cabin went completely still. Even the crying toddler in row 9 stopped mid-wail. Jack's heart thundered at the sound of that name. It had been nearly 9 years since it had last been uttered. "I think you have the wrong," he started to say, but the officer thrust a small, encrypted tablet into his hand. On the screen, a solitary image glared back at him, a classified patch he hadn't seen since his last mission. Beneath it were the words, "Project Mirrorhawk, reactivated." He felt his breath hitch. That project? It was meant to be locked away forever. The woman from across the aisle stood up confidently and made her way over. "Captain Miller," she said gently. "We thought you were lost to us. But the world's shifting again, and your name came up in the signal." He locked eyes with her. "Signal?" She hesitated for a moment before responding. "A beacon, sir. From call sign Raven. We believe your wife's last transmission wasn't lost, it was encoded. And it's just activated again." Jack felt the air whoosh out of his lungs. He recalled that fateful night, her fighter, her voice breaking through the crackling static, her final words, "Don't come after me, Jack." Save her. He had obeyed. He saved their daughter. And he had walked away from the skies for good. Now, standing there in the narrow aisle of a civilian plane, all those buried memories surged back to the surface. Emma stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. Daddy? Why are the soldiers here? Jack crouched down beside her, a smile breaking through the tension. It's okay, sweetheart. Just some old friends. The woman observed with a warm, almost affectionate look on her face. We can fill you in at Andrews, she said. Your clearance is still good to go. He glanced down at his daughter, then out the window where the Raptors soared like watchful guardians. Every fiber of his being urged him to turn it down, to stay put and be the dad Emma needed. Yet, a part of him, the part he had fought for years to quiet, had suddenly come roaring back to life. Hours later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a convoy rolled onto the restricted tarmac of Andrews Air Force Base. Emma was sound asleep in the back seat, her beloved penguin snugly cradled under her chin. Colonel Ava Reyes, who had introduced herself earlier, sat next to Jack in the front. They called you Ghost Rider because you always made it back, she said softly. Even against all odds. Jack managed a small grin. I gave up on believing in ghosts long ago. Reyes handed him a small drive. Maybe it's time to change that. He examined it in his hands, the silver glinting in the dim light. Engraved on its surface were a pair of initials, E.M., his late wife's name. As they approached the hangar, the engine hummed with promise, and the rows of silent jets sparkled under the floodlights. Jack took a deep breath, caught between his memories and the love he felt for his family. When the hangar doors parted, he caught sight of it, the F-22 he hadn't flown in years, newly restored, with his old call sign emblazoned beneath the cockpit. For the first time in ages, the sky didn't feel like a place of sorrow. It felt alive with possibilities. He turned back to Emma, still peacefully dreaming, and murmured, just one more flight. Reyes regarded him, her voice barely above a hush. Welcome back, Ghost Rider. And as he stepped into the light, the shadows of his past joyfully converged with the man he had become.